Hi everyone and welcome to Classic Gamers 74, episode 32. I am your host, Anthony Ventrilo, and today we're going to discuss the Trackball arcade games as suggested by loyal viewer Randal Fox. The Trackball as a method of user interface control has been around for some time. Up until the late 1970s, however, trackballs had mainly military or industrial uses. The Canadian Navy used this particular item that you see in the picture called the Digital Automated Tracking and Radar System, or DATAR. The DATAR was a method of giving all ships within a particular fleet a single view of their operational status by collating information provided by sensors placed on board of each vessel. It was actually nicknamed the roller bar back then. The actual hardware used to display this information was adapted from a radar screen. As you can see, they actually used a Canadian 5-pin bowling ball mounted on several air rollers. The trackball as a concept was invented by a British engineer, German-born Ralph Benjamin, who has also been called the father of the mouse, and along with Ralph Baer, is considered one of the fathers of video gaming. As time went on, the trackball would evolve. The basic electrical contacts were replaced with LEDs that shone through slots cut into the wheels. This provided more accurate directional readings from users' hand movements and of relevance. Could not only sense direction, but also the pace at which the user of the trackball was maneuvering the ball. The device gave users complete freedom of movement across an imagined flat XY plane, with the ability to control speed of movement with a high degree of accuracy compared to standard joysticks. Now for today's trivia question. What was the name of the very first arcade game to use the trackball? You think you know the answer? Wait till the end of the video and see if you're right. When Atari released their game Atari Football in 1978, they used a massive 4.5-inch trackball out of aluminum that they felt would actually be able to withstand the battering that a lot of games take in the arcade. This game, as you can see, is one of the first ones to use this trackball science. And if you were going to say that this is the first game, you would be wrong. A lot of people do consider Atari Football to be one of the first games to use the trackball, but it wasn't the first. Here's a look at the control panel from Atari Football. You can get a pretty good idea, if you haven't seen it in real life, how large the trackball was. People that played this game actually claim that they got quite a workout just from using this massive trackball to play the game. It's hard to even imagine playing the game Missile Command without the trackball, as it has pretty much become synonymous with the game itself. Later incarnations of the game weren't as popular or didn't seem to work out as well as the original arcade game with the trackball. I'll discuss Missile Command in a later episode. For the most part, most trackball games were made by Atari, as the games that most of us think of when we think of trackball games were made by them. After Missile Command, they decided to make the trackball a little bit smaller and actually made it to about 2.5 inches, and all games that came after that would use this standard size. The trackball itself is pretty amazing. Broken down, it is actually a pretty simple device. The ball itself sits on two rollers at a right angle to cover the X and Y flat planes. These rollers house discs at each end with holes cut around their edges. An LED light shines through these sequential holes, creating a blink as it passes through. Sensors measure the speed of these on-off pulses and feed the information into the main PCB. As you look at the instructions here about maintaining, you can see that it's really not that difficult of a concept, and it's really not that hard to maintain these arcade machines, kind of the opposite of some of the later machines. Over time, the rollers tend to wear with prolonged use as the ball wears the metal, but replacement bearings and shafts can be purchased. Other than a drop of 3-in-1 oil every 6 months, you should find your trackball needs little maintenance for a good decade or so. And remember, be careful to make sure that you put the 3-in-1 oil only on the ball bearings, because if they get onto the shafts, they're going to get onto people's hands, and nothing's worse than getting oil on your hands when playing a video game. Alright, so let's check out a couple of these trackball games. First one we'll look at is the famous Centipede by Atari. Centipede itself has gone on to become one of the most famous and well-known Atari games in history, being ported out to just about every system that Atari has ever made. Actually, I think they have ported it out to every system. Anyway, probably next to Missile Command, it's one of the most synonymous trackball games in history. Its legend still continues to go on to this day. Matter of fact, rumors have been very strongly hinted at that they're going to make a Centipede movie, so let's see what happens. Atari Baseball from 1979 is a good follow-up to Atari's 1978 football game. You can see that it follows the same kind of early technology as Atari Football did, although by today's standards and even by the 2600 standards, it's considered quite simple. I can tell you from personal experience, though, this game is a lot of fun. Actually, in my opinion, all of these early Atari trackball games were a lot of fun. Using their own trackball technology, Midway actually literally got into the game with extra bases. It's pretty much the same game as Atari Baseball, except for this one they added a little bit of color and some sound effects, making the game a little more realistic, but yet still utilizing the trackball technology. 1978's Bowling Alley by Midway continued on with the success that Atari found with the trackball. The only downside to this game is that there is no sound. Although I find the game to be a lot of fun otherwise, and it was probably one of the very first trackball games I myself ever played. Most trackball games that came out in the next decade would be sports related. One of the most famous of these had to be Capcom Bowling from 1988. Realistic sound effects, easy gameplay, and above all, just an overall fun experience has made Capcom Bowling probably one of the most memorable of the later trackball games. Wacko, a game made by Bally Midway in 1982, utilized both the joystick and the trackball in this fun puzzle game. 1985's Give Me a Break by Bally Midway is still one of my all-time favorite pool games. 1983's Crystal Castle by Atari was a departure from their typical trackball games, which were generally sports-related games. This was a fast-paced pick-em-up game that still has quite a following to this day. Although by the mid-1990s, trackball games pretty much became a thing of the past, there were a couple standout games that came out early in the decade. One of those was the very bizarre game Peggle. The basic premise of this game is to spin this wheel around, trying to not let Peggle go to the splash into the bottom, and you're supposed to try to destroy all of the pegs. And yeah, it's bizarre because at the bottom you have a bowl of guacamole. You're supposed to not let him fall in, and then you have bowls of other weird things. I think that's mustard and stuff. Yeah, it's a very bizarre game, but yet it's a lot of fun. I kind of discovered it by accident when I was doing research for this video. So yeah, I had a lot of fun playing it, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. And the final game today is Shoes by Atari from 1990. This fun-filled game is basically horseshoes, but boy, it's a lot of fun, so check it out.
Hurry up. Yeehaw! Player 2 scores 1 ringer and 4 points.
And of course you have the beer round, where whoever loses has to buy beer for both. And the answer to today's trivia question, which was, what was the name of the very first arcade trackball game? Shuffleboard by Midway from 1978. Well, that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any suggestions for a genre of games or games themselves that you'd like to see reviewed on this channel, much like today's episode was suggested by our loyal viewer Randal Fox, let us know in the comments section below, and who knows, it may become the subject of a later episode. Well, this has been Anthony Ventrello. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, have a great day. Goodbye.